Okay, yep, so perfect. All right, hi guys. My name is Harsh, and as Michael said, I am a second year computer engineering student at the University of Waterloo. I have done a couple years of teaching, so I've worked with kids, teaching them very basic introduction to programming, lots of different languages, Python, JavaScript, and a lot of working with the Scratch as well. So, you know, I'm going to be here today. We're going to be starting off with, just introduction to Python. I'm going to introduce you to, just some basic concepts and, what is Python? What do we use it for, right? All of those things. So, yeah, let's get started. Does anyone have any questions before we get started? Yep. Okay, perfect. All right. So, and you guys can see my screen, right? Just give me a quick thumbs up or something from you. Yep. Okay, perfect. All right. So let's go over just a quick, what are we gonna cover today? So first thing, like I said, what is Python programming, right? What do we use it for? Why do we need it? Second thing, we're gonna be starting off by, creating our own mini Python program, seeing how we can run it in the terminal. And then we're gonna dive a bit more into, the concepts in terms of, input, output, getting different information from the users, right? Storing them using variables. What are different data types that we have in Python? And then moving on to conditions and if statements, which is a little bit more of like the logic and like the more, fun stuff as for our programs. And then to sort of wrap it up, we're going to sort of have a mini project at the end that we're going to work through everyone, and we're going to see what we can make with that, okay? So before we get started, just a couple of quick housekeeping rules and just, general sort of expectations I have. Number one, be respectful. We're all here to learn and have fun, right? So respect one another. Second thing is, ask questions, right? You guys are new to this, so, there might be lots and lots of questions in your mind as we're going through stuff, or, I'm explaining something, it doesn't make sense. So, feel free to, sort of just like type it in the chat. I'll try keep my eye on the chat every once in a while. Or once I finish explaining something, you can, unmute and, just like, hey, I was wondering this, just feel free to ask questions. And then, I might also have questions for you guys, right? Just sort of see if you guys are following along, or like, if I need to sort of re-explain stuff. So, be engaging and, yeah. Number three is, learn. You guys are all here because, you're interested in Python, you want to learn about coding, all that stuff. So, try to focus while I'm teaching, follow along. And, if you see that someone else has typed a question in the chat, and, you can try helping them out, if I'm like sort of explaining something to the rest of the class. So, one of the best ways to learn is, really being able to explain to others, right? So learn, help others, and last thing is have fun, right? This is supposed to be a fun experience for you guys where you come along, learn new things, right? So yeah, these are just, very basic things. Any questions on this so far? Or are we all good? No? Okay, perfect. Let's keep going. So let's start off with this. What is coding? I know you guys are new to this, but in your idea, in your mind, what is coding to you guys? What do we use it for? What does it look like? Anyone? You can unmute and give it a shot. There's no right or wrong answers. Just what is your idea of coding, right? Anyone? No. I'll give you a couple of seconds, think about it. Anyone? Okay, here, I'll give you guys a hint for this first one. So coding is basically creating a set of instructions, or you can think of it as sort of like a recipe. We're cooking or making a little program, right, that we want to run on our computers. So programming or coding is, like I said, a set of instructions or recipe that sort of can be interpreted or understood by the computer, and it tells it what to do, right? So we can use it for a lot of things, right? If we want to sort of simulate real life scenarios, like think about, you want to launch a rocket into outer space, right? You can use a computer to sort of, model the trajectory as it's, launching or going to outer space, right? What does that look like? So that's one thing you can use coding for. You can use it to sort of solve various, different problems in real life scenarios, right? For example, you can have your business, right? And you want to make a website for it. So, you can reach out to more clients. You can like grow your business that way, right? So you can use coding to make a website, right? And you can also use it for sort of creative work, right? Like, for example, if you're really into gaming, you like to, play games, yeah, right? Share with your friends. So you can use coding to make games and all that stuff as well, right? So coding, like I said, is just basically writing instructions so that the computer, when we give it to it, it can understand and then it can sort of run accordingly. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay,
Yes.
perfect. All right. Let's go on to the next one. So what is a programming language then? So now we just covered coding, right? What do you guys think is a programming language? Anyone want to sort of take a guess at that? What do you guys think? So we learned about programming. Now, what is a programming language, right? Like what does a language mean usually? Like, when we say a language, what does that mean to you guys? And then if you sort of combine it with what we just sort of, learned about programming, what does that mean? Anyone? It's okay. Like there's no right or wrong answer, right? Like just take a guess. How about everyone goes just in one sentence or two, can everyone just go one by one and sort of explain, what do you think is a programming language? Um, can we start with Lynn?
Um, uh, Programming language is, I don't know.
Just take a guess. Like what do you think? Like we went over programming, right? What is if you add the word language, like usually when we talk about language, it's sort of like, communicating, right? In terms of, so that two people can talk to each other, right? So now if we think about in terms of a program, what does that look like? Does anyone else want to take a guess?
I think I have one.
Okay, yeah, go ahead,
I
Christopher.
think programming language is like a language, but only like computers have. Like, for example, dashes or something. Like you don't use dashes in languages. That
Mhm.
doesn't really happen. This is more like for computers. Tech.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it is. So let's look at what is a programming language. So as you said, Christopher, right? A programming language is something that, we use to, like I said, communicate with computers, right? Computers don't understand the language that we speak, right? Or, the words that we say, right? Computers actually only understand zeros and ones, and that's the language that they sort of use, and it's called binary. Has anyone heard it before? Has anyone heard about binary? Yeah. So binary, I'll show you an example after this actually, but binary is basically just zeros and ones. And so technically everything in, on your phones, your computers, anything that's sort of electronic uses zeros and ones under the hood, right? So like how do we talk to the computer, right? Like you don't want to code in zeros and ones like all day in front of your screen, right? That's not fun. So what we use programming languages for is that we sort of have a set of rules or sort of like a predefined sort of set of instructions that we as programmers can use to sort of write instructions so that the computer can then understand what we want it to do. So Python, right, is a language, JavaScript, Scratch, all those are, languages that we use to sort of communicate and talk with the, computer and tell it to, do all sort of things. We can make games, we can make websites, pretty much anything we wanted to do, right? Does that make sense? Anyone have questions regarding that? No? Okay, cool. But yeah, you're spot on, Christopher. Good job. Let's see, what do we have next? Okay, so why do we need programming languages? I kind of said this, so let's see who's paying attention. Well, what do we need it for?
To
Yeah, go ahead. Go
um,
ahead.
to tell a computer the instructions. and what it needs to do.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's correct. Anyone else have anything else to add on to that? No, we all agree? Perfect. So why do we need languages? So again, going back to, as I said, we need the languages so that we can talk to the computers in a way that they understand, right? It's sort of like, translating from stuff that we understand into stuff that the machines can understand, right? And as I said, right, machines only understand sort of zeros and ones. So as you see the little image on the side here with like the arrows and all those things here. That's sort of like a high level overview of what it looks like. So when it says a high level language, that's something like Python or Scratch or JavaScript, right? That's sort of a language that we can write in a way that we understand, right? And so what happens after that is it gets converted into assembly language, which is a little bit more, I guess, complex in the sense that it only, stores information in like memory and manages all that stuff. And then that goes down another level and we get into machine code, right? Which is again, zeros and ones, right? And then that actually communicates with the computer hardware, which is like, the actual, the circuitry on your phone, or inside your laptop, whatever that is. All of this is built on top of hardware. So whenever we write some code or we write some programs, that needs to communicate with the hardware underneath, right? So it can actually execute stuff. So this is sort of like a quick, I guess, overview of what it looks like when we, type something in code to what it actually does under the hood when it actually runs the program, right? And to sort of show you, let me click on this website. So for example, let's to show you what I mean by, what does a computer see when we give it something. So let's say, I want to say, hi, Hirsch, right? I want to print that out in my program or code when I run it afterwards. So for us, we humans understand text, right? So let's see what that text converted into binary, what computers understand looks like, okay? So if I click convert here, this is what the computer sees. This is hi, Hirsch, in a language that the computer understands. It's pretty sick, right? See, it's all zeros and ones, right? So now imagine if you want to write a longer sentence, right? A long like paragraph, hi Hirsch, how are you doing? Do you like Python or something, right? Like this will just get longer and longer. Look at this. We just wrote like 2, 3 quick sentences and we're already like, like tons and tons of zeros and ones, right? So this is why we have programming languages, right? Like we can write technically everything we do in zeros and ones, but it's not fun, it's tedious, and it's hard to, like write stuff in a clean and like, useful manner. We can easily make mistakes, right? So this is why we have programming languages. It allows us to write stuff that we can understand, and then it can translate into something that the computers can understand. All right? Are we all good with that? Any sort of questions there? No? Okay, perfect. All right, let's keep going. All right, so we were here. Let's see what's up next. So now in terms of Python, right? Now Python is a type of programming language, and it's really popular nowadays because it's very easy to use and learn as well, right? So in terms of when I started learning coding, I started with Python too because it was very easy to learn. That you can make lots of, quick and fun projects with it and try out lots of different things, right? So Python is pretty much the perfect language for beginners. And this is basically why we're starting off with that, right? Couple of sort of, I guess cool features that Python has is that, like I said, you can use it for a lot of things, and we're going to cover that in the next sort of slide here, but lots of people are using it as well for a long time, right? So as you grow older, as you become, a Python developer or, a software developer, whatever that is you want to do, and you're working in Python, right? It's going to be really useful because you're going to have lots and lots of people who are also working with it. So you can get, lots of resources and help in terms of that. It's open source, so it means, people like us who are, using these languages, right? And coding with it, it means that we can, if we find something that we want to add to it or, fix something about it, we can go and we can actually, make these languages, edit them and, make them work how we want it to do, right? So that's something called open source. It allows us to, sort of take an existing piece of software and continuously work on it until it gets better and better, and then everyone can use it, right? So that's another sort of cool feature about Python. I guess let's go into sort of its use cases, right? So what is Python used for? So here are a couple of sort of categories here. So we have AI and robotics, we have automation. So, like using coding or, Python to sort of, get rid of unnecessary like, tasks or, automate them so that you don't have to do it, right? The computer can do it for you, right? We also have web development, so like, making websites, all that stuff. And then lastly, there's also gaming, right? You can use this for making all sorts of, terminal-based games, and whatnot. So can anyone give me an example of, where you have seen sort of, AI or automation or any of these things on the screen here? Anyone?
For AI, I see it in some of my classmates' writing.
Okay, cool. Can you tell me an example of like of what you have seen? Like, are you talking about ChatGPT?
Yeah.
Yeah. How many of you, can you guys just show me, like, raise your hands? How many of you used ChatGPT before? Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, pretty much everyone. Christopher, have you used ChatGPT? No? Okay. I mean, one thing you can do after this class, maybe, just try playing around with ChatGPT. It's a pretty fun tool, right? You can ask it any question pretty much. He's like, hey, like, can you tell me, how a car works, right? Or can you tell me like, can you do these like math problems for me? It can pretty much do anything. It's a pretty cool tool. So as you said, like ChatGPT, right? That tool basically was built using Python, right? So that's one application of AI. Does anyone else have any other example that they can think of? No? Okay, I can tell you one quick example in terms of auto. Oh, yeah, you another one? Go ahead, go ahead.
Scripts like people in games usually like cheat, like they
Mhm.
fly around illegally, and there's just like the bots.
Yep, yep. So that's a good example. So that example actually is sort of a mix of two things. So like you said, you can use it for gamings, right? You can create scripts or, get like little hacks into games and stuff, right? But that's also sort of like a mix with automation too, right? You have like a bot, for example, right? That's playing on like on your behalf. So the bot, like you can tell it, hey, like, do this when this happens, right? Or like, hide for cover when someone's, trying to like, shoot at you or whatever, right? Like you're telling it what to do. So you're automating sort of the process, right? Of like how you would play the game, right? I guess one quick example before we move on is when I was working with my coworker at my last co-op, right? They made this cool little alarm clock for his friend on his birthday. And that was sort of an example of automation because basically they recorded a whole bunch of, special messages, like, hey, wake up, dude, or hey, like, you're late for school, whatever, right? And they were able to sort of build this like cool alarm clock. So, you can set the time and then every time it's play like a special message for him, right? So that's sort of like a way of automating a cool, like, everyday task, right? So that's just another quick example. There's just tons, and we can dive more into this as we, move forward and whatnot. But yeah, these are just a couple of quick categories in terms like what can you use Python for, right? And let's see, what do we have next? And okay, so now let's actually get into coding, right? You guys are all here to sort of code and learn Python. So I think the best way for us to do this is that I'm gonna share a link with you in the chat here quickly. And using that, you should all sort of have like your own mini like code terminal on the side. You can open it up in Google, and then we're just gonna follow along. We're gonna do some quick code examples, learn some couple of concepts, and at the end sort of build our mini project, okay? So give me 1 second, I will share this link with you guys.
Post it.
Okay, so I've just put it in the chat. Does everyone know how to sort of see the chat? Yeah, okay. Let me, once you are in once you click on that link and you have it opened up, you know, this is give me a thumbs up or something so I know everyone's got it, and then you can begin, okay? I put it in the chat here. So you can just click on it and it'll open up like a Google tab on the side for you. Okay, Tony's done. Let's see. Okay, Yoon, you're done. What else are we waiting for? Christopher, how's it looking for you? Working on it? Done? Okay, perfect. And last one. Can you tell me how to pronounce your name? Is it Giai? How do you pronounce that?
嘉义
Giai? Okay. Did it work for you too? Can you
yes
access that link? Okay, cool. So I think everyone here should have it, right? Perfect. All right. So one last confirmation, everyone has it, right? Just everyone give me a quick thumbs up so I can see. 1, 2, 3, and Christopher, you're good too, right? Did the link work for you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay, perfect. So I think everyone has it now. So let me open it up on my end as well. Okay. So does it look something like this? Like it should have a little bit of text or something on yours. You can just highlight it and just, you know, get rid of it, like click backspace and it'll go away. It should just look something like this, you know, you should be able to like type stuff. Is that working for you guys? Yeah, okay, perfect. So, you know, this is every programmer in their life, every time they sort of start off something, the first thing they do is learn how to, you know, print something in a language, right? And usually what we do is we have a little saying or like a, you know, we usually start by, you know, printing or hello world. That's sort of like, you know, the programming type of thing we do. So I'm going to show you guys how to print something to your terminal. So before we do that though, let me just introduce you quickly to in terms of what you have here. So this, what you see in front of you is a code interpreter or a code compiler, you can call it. So on the left side, do you see where it says main.py at the top? So that's what you would call your sort of Python script, right? Your piece of program. So inside this file, you can write all your code, right? So for example, you can see on my screen, I can write stuff here. And then when I click run, on the right side, what we have, that's the sort of output terminal. And that's where we're gonna sort of see all the output and, you know, we can get input from the users as well using this terminal here. So on the left side, we write our code, and on the right side, we sort of, you know, interact with our users using that terminal, okay? Are you good with that? Okay, perfect. So, like I said, we're gonna start by printing something to our terminal, okay? So in Python, there's something called keywords that we use. So a print statement is something that's sort of unique. It has a specific sort of, you know, keyword that we use that tells, you know, our code to that, hey, I want to print something to a terminal. So I'm going to show you how you can do it. And if you want, you guys can follow along with me on your computer as well, okay? So just, you can type in literally print, and you see how it automatically highlights in blue? You guys see that? Yeah, so that basically means, okay, this is something that Python recognizes as like a keyword, you know, it knows what this means. So, and then you're gonna do open bracket, and it's automatically gonna do the close bracket for you. See that? So you're gonna write print, and then you're gonna put shift quotation marks like this, and you're just gonna print hello world. You can print something else to whatever you want, like, you know, hi, your name, or, you know, hi Hirsch, or like, you know, I like Python, whatever you want. You try printing something, and we're gonna see it output in the terminal on the side. So I'm gonna do hello world like this. And then once you have that, make sure you're spelling print correctly. And then you have, like I said, the opening and closing bracket, and then the two quotations, which will highlight your sort of text in green here. And once that's done, you're gonna press this blue button run here, which is gonna sort of print out your stuff on the side here. Does everyone see that? Yeah, okay, try it on your thing quickly. Print something, print your name, whatever you want. And once that's done, give me a quick thumbs up so that I know. Yeah, okay. Yeah, one person done. GI is done, perfect. And if you guys are having troubles or something's not working, feel free to let me know anytime, okay? We're gonna start off very basic, nice and slow, make sure everyone's caught up, and then we're gonna build up as we go, okay? So don't be shy or afraid to ask me questions. Okay. And yep, Yoon is also done. Christopher, are you almost done? Yeah, done? Okay, perfect. Okay, so that was basically how you print something in a terminal, right? And you can print multiple things. So for example, I can print, so if you press enter, it'll take you on to the next line, and then you can print, Python, and you can keep doing this and then print more and more as you need. So this is basically just how do you get something you write in code into the output side of things, right? So it's something that the user can see, right, in terms of the output. So that's just the very basic beginning part. Now we're going to dive a little bit more into the lesson part of things. So first thing I'm going to teach you is variables and data types. Okay, has anyone heard of them before? Does anyone know what a variable is? No? Okay. So let's start with that. It's going to be very simple, okay? So a variable, basically think of it as this. When you make your code, right, or your program, right, you want to store some sort of information, a piece of data that you want to use in your program afterwards, right? So, for example, think of variable as like you have a big sort of like a cubby, right? A big cubby. So then you can put something inside of it and access it later or take it out or oh, okay, I think someone just joined us here. It's okay, we can keep going. Yeah, so that allows us sort of, we can put something in that cubby and easily take it out or use it as needed, right? That's just like, it's like a temporary placeholder. You can store stuff there, take it out, put it back, modify it as needed, right? That's basically what a variable does. So what are the benefits or why do we need variables? So I have sort of 3 sticky notes here that sort of goes over it. So like I said, variables allow us to sort of store and keep track of, important information or data for our programs, right? That's number one. That's why we need it, right? We want to keep track of something, so we're going to store it using a variable. Second thing is once we store in a variable, right, we can easily access that information or whatever is stored inside by just calling that variable. So for example, if I have, name equals Harsh, right? That variable name is storing my name, right? So then next time I want to print out, hello Harsh, or like, how are you doing, Harsh, whatever. I don't have to type Harsh every single time. I can just say hello and then my name, right? And then my name inside it already stores Harsh, right? So then it will sort of look what's inside and then output that, right? Does that sort of make sense, guys? Right? So you can store something inside the variable and then later you can access it and use it inside of your code as you need it. And then the last thing, which I already sort of mentioned, is that you can use it again and again, right? For example, if your variable was storing, let's say like 100 sentences, right? Because technically you can store anything inside of a variable. Imagine if you were to use that sort of piece of information again and again, like 1,000 times inside of your code. That's going to be a lot of work, right? You're going to have to write out 100 sentences every single time, right? Or you can just write it out once, store it in your variable, and then just call that variable every time you need it, right? Does that make sense? So it's going to allow you to sort of, store important stuff, be able to use it again, and easily sort of access and modify as needed. Those are sort of the 3 main things. Does any have any questions regarding that? No? Okay, perfect. So now variables, right? Like I said, it can store anything, but in terms of languages, right? We have certain types of data that we can store, and that's called data types. So on the side, I have a couple of list of data types here, and we're going to work with them one by one. So the first thing, or the first sort of data we're going to cover is a string. So a string in Python is basically a word, a sentence, a paragraph, you know, tons of paragraphs, basically anything that you can type. So, you know, like your name, you know, like a phrase, whatever that is, right? Anything that has like letters, numbers, symbols, you can store that all using something that we call a string. Does that make sense? Yep. Okay. So now the next one that we have is characters. And characters are a little bit different than strings in the sense that strings can hold multiple things, right? It can be words, sentences, whatnot. But characters, they're special because they only hold one letter or one symbol, right? So the main thing is strings have multiple and characters only have one, right? So like think of it like, you know, in terms of the alphabet, like A to Z, right? Like each letter is a character, right? Or for example, you know, your exclamation mark or the at symbol or, you know, the period, those are all sort of characters. And that's like, you know, and we can use these characters and strings as part of our programs to do like lots of different things, okay? So far we have string, we have characters, okay? Let's look at what we have next. So next, we have integers. So does anyone here know what an integer is? Have you guys learned it in math yet? No?
Yeah.
Some people? Okay. So for those of you who don't know, integer is basically any number, you know, it could be negative, positive, zero, basically any number, but the only restriction is it has to be a whole number, meaning that, you know, you can't have like, you know, like a decimal place and then like some numbers after it. It has to be either like, you know, 1 or 0 or, you know, 1 million. It could be anything. There's sort of no really bounds there. Okay. So that's an integer. It can be, like I said, negative numbers, positive numbers. It can only be numbers that have no decimal places though. Okay. Are you good there? Perfect. And like I said, right, if something doesn't make sense or you have a question, like feel free to ask anytime, okay? We want to make sure that everyone is sort of, you know, understanding these things because it's going to be useful as we move forward, okay? It's going to be useful when you sort of, you know, make our little mini games and stuff as well. So if anything doesn't make sense right now, I think it would be a good time to ask, okay? Now let's look at the next thing. So next thing that we have is double or floating. So they're sort of similar, but there's slight changes, but I just want to introduce you to them. And for now, only thing you guys need to know is that, you know how integers didn't allow decimal places, right? Now double and floating basically can store numbers that have decimal numbers, right? Or, you know, like, yeah, mainly decimal numbers. And again, they can be negative, positive, can be like as big as you want. You know, I can have like big or small, like I can do 0.00001, like that's a floating number, or, you know, a double you can call it, right? So the main difference between string and characters was that character is only one, right? One letter, one symbol. String can be multiple of them, right? So like words, paragraphs, sentences. Integers are negative or positive numbers, right? But they cannot have any decimals. And double or floating are numbers that can have decimals, okay? So everyone's following along so far? Yep, okay, perfect. And last one is a special one that we use in programming is called Boolean. And all that is it stores whether something is true or false. So in terms of like, you know, did you eat breakfast? Like I can store it in a variable called did I have breakfast? And I can call it either true or false, right? So that tells me basically, you know, is something true or false? Basically, that's all it is telling us. There's nothing, you know, hidden behind that, nothing more complex. It just tells you, you know, is something true or not, okay? Are we good with that? Any questions? No? Okay. So now let's do a quick sort of, you know, test sort of see, you know, if you guys are understanding and, you know, before we move on to the next thing. So we have these different types of data on the right here, right? We went through string, characters, integers, double/float, and Boolean, right? So we sort of have 5 main categories here. And down here, I have 4 different sort of use case or examples. And I want you guys to tell me which type of data structure or data type would we use to sort of store this sort of information, okay? So first one that we have is student grades. So if you want to store a student's grade, like whatever grade they have in their subject, what would you use out of these 5 things to store it? Anyone have anything they want to share?
Maybe the string.
String? Okay. Quick question. Why would you use string? I just want to understand. Is there something special you thought that you need strings for? I believe it was Lynn, right? Lynn, did you have anything in particular that made you say we should probably use string for that?
No.
Okay. I mean, you can use it with the string, that's perfectly fine. So let's think about this. When you think about a student's grade, right? Usually what do you guys, the teacher gives you grades in terms of either like A, B, C, like you can get a letter grade, right? So
Yeah.
that's just one letter, right? So if you were only needing to store one letter, out of these 5 things, what's the best sort of data type to store it in? If you only need to store that one letter.
Character.
Character, exactly, that's correct. So yeah, that's perfectly right. So we would use a character if we were using a sort of a letter grade, right? For students grade like A, B, C, D. What if we were using like a number? For example, like you got an 80% on this exam, or you got like 100%, right? Like what would we use for that? What do you guys think? Anyone else?
Maybe integer.
Integer, yeah, perfect. We can also sort of use double or floats, right? Like if your teachers are nice and they give you like half marks, right? Like 10.5, or like you got like 95%, right? Or 95.5%, right? We can also use double or floating, right? So like I said, there's more than one right answer to these things. So yeah, good job. Let's go on to the next one quickly. What would we use if you want to do expenses? For example, if I have like a program that keeps track of, how much are you spending on, food and like games and, shopping, all that stuff. Like, what sort of data type would I use to store that like sort of number in terms of your expenses? Anyone else want to take a guess?
Maybe integer.
Integer, yeah. Someone else also said something. Who was it?
Float.
Float. Yep. Perfect. That both of them are correct. Like I said, right? Again, integers, if you were dealing only with numbers that, didn't have any decimals, right? You would use integers. But if you think in terms of money, right? Anytime we're dealing with stuff with money, right? We usually have like, like $10.15, right? Or like $10.75, right? So usually we write that as like $10.5, right? Or $10.75, right? So we need those decimal digits, right? To represent the sort of the remainder cents that we need to give to the person, right? So yeah, in this case, float would be a good example. But if you were assuming everything only is done in like, whole numbers, then we can use integers as well, okay? Okay, let's quickly go through this. What would we use for username or like login information, right? Like just for your game account login stuff. Like username, password,
Character.
character. Okay,
Yes.
is
Because
your
the password include letters and symbols
okay,
and maybe numbers.
that's perfect. But think about this. Is your password only one letter long? With
No.
the same password? No, right?
It's
So what
eight characters or more.
Yeah, so what else can you use that allows you to sort of use lots of characters?
String.
Exactly, right? Strings. So yeah, that's perfect. So strings, like I said, you can use numbers, characters, special symbols, everything, right? In your password, you want to have all those different types of things mixed together so no one can easily hack your account, right? So yeah, that's basically what I had here. Let's go on to the next topic. Or before we move on, does anyone else have any other questions regarding anything with variables, Anything they're not sure about, any type of the data type stuff you went over here? Are we all good here? Yep. Okay. All right. So we're going to the next thing. So we went over variables, data types, and sort of output, right? We printed something in the terminal here. The next thing that we sort of need to look at is, getting input from the users, right? So anytime you sort of make a program, usually someone's going to use your program, right? Whether it's you, your friends, your family, whoever it is, right? You want to make something that people can, play with or interact with, right? So using, what we just learned about variables and, storing information, right? Let's learn how to sort of get input from a user, right? Someone that's going to use your program. So what we have in Python for that is a special keyword, just like print, and it's called input, literally input. So if you want, you guys can try this on your computers as well. So you're going to do input, and then you're going to have open and close bracket, and then you can ask anything. So for example, if I want to ask my user, what is your name? That's what I'm going to ask my user. Okay. So let's see what that looks like. Oh, do you guys see it on my screen here? So I did input, and then what is your name? And you see on the right side now it's printing what is your name, and then there's like this flashing little like line there. So now that means I can type stuff there. So I can say Harsh, right? And basically our program stopped there because we didn't have to do anything else. But we want to sort of make something a little bit more than just that, right? So if I want to, for example, ask a user for their name and then print, hello user's name, how do you think I can do that based on what we just learned? Think about variables, think about, outputting and printing stuff back. Can someone tell me, how can I go about, asking user for their name and then printing it back out? How can I do that?
Do some repeat thingy.
Sorry? Can you say that again? I couldn't quite hear you.
Can you repeat the question?
Oh, yeah, for sure. So my question was, if I wanted to make a very simple program in Python, right, that asks someone for their name and then prints it back out, right? Like, what do I need to do to sort of create that? Like, what's the sort of process of doing that? Anyone have any ideas?
You would have to store the input first.
Yep, that's right. And then we want to print it back out, right? Exactly. So that's exactly what we're gonna do. So I want you guys to try this on your computers as well, okay? So we're gonna, like I said, we're gonna start with something very simple. We're gonna ask the user their name. So I'm gonna call, this is why we need variables, right? You're gonna see this. So I'm gonna create a variable called name, okay? And the way that we sort of use or create variables in Python is you write the name of your variable, and then you want to set it to something, right? Like you want to assign it the value of something. So this, you're gonna do equal sign. So what this is gonna do is I'm gonna create a variable called name, and I'm gonna give it the value. I'm gonna set it equal to whatever value I get from the input here. Does that make sense? So this input is gonna ask me for my name here, and then whatever I type here, so Harsh, is going to be stored inside of this main variable, okay? And then once I do that, then I want to print it back out, right? I'm gonna print out hello Harsh. So to do that, going back, I'm going to do print, and then I'm gonna do, again, quotations, hello. And then now I want to use a value that's stored in a variable, right? When I'm printing it back, I don't want to just hard code or like, type Harsh, because what if someone else is using it, right? I don't want to say hello Harsh every single time. I want to say whatever name that they entered. So to do that in Python, I'm gonna sort of concatenate. And what that means is sort of add two strings together or combine them so that it outputs the final string or the big string that I want it to, okay? So I'm going to do hello and then plus, which basically tells Python like, hey, here's the first part and then I'm going to add it with something else. And then the thing I'm going to add on to it is the name. Okay. So just a quick recap. I get the input from the user. I'm going to ask them for their name. Then I'm going to store it inside of this name variable. And I'm going to print it back out saying hello. And then I'm going to add it with the name which the user just entered at the top here. That's stored inside of this variable. Okay. Is everyone following along so far? Yep. Okay. If you guys want, you can try this on your screens and let's see what this does. So I'm going to ask it, what is your name? I'm going to enter name Harsh, and voila, it says hello Harsh, right? And just to show you why we can use variables, I can enter any name. I can say, call it Bob, and it will print out Bob and hello Bob, or I can call it Joe and hello Joe, right? So now this is sort of, we're sort of starting to see, how powerful Python is, right? This is just something very simple, but as we build on top of this, you can start seeing, right, like how we can use this for lots and lots of things, right? So try doing this on your side quickly, and then we can move on to the next thing, okay? Does anyone have any questions so far, or do you guys need help with anything? Is it working on your side of things? Yeah. Okay, Tony's giving me a thumbs up. What about everyone else?
No.
No? What's not working on your side, Lynn?
So what are you supposed to like type?
Sorry?
What are you supposed to like write? The same thing?
Yeah, so I asked it for my name, right? For example, you can ask it like, how old are you, right? You can ask anything. So anything inside of this, you see these two quotations here, those little green text, right? That's basically what the user is going to see on the right side. So I was asking, what is your name, right? So I showed what is your name on the side. So I can ask, how old are you? And then I can just, you are, I'm going to change the name of my variable as well, right? So then I know that, what the variable is actually storing. So how old are you? I can put I am 20 and you are 20, right? So you can do anything that you want. I sort of show you if you want to try it along as I'm explaining it, you have it on your side, right? So if you want, you can try making something very simple, ask someone their name or, how old they are, and then try printing it back out, okay? Does that sort of help clarify what you were asking about? Yeah. Anyone else have any other sort of questions or something that's, they need help with? If you guys are sort of done, you like tried it out on your end, just give me a thumbs up, okay? So I know we can sort of move on to the next thing. Tony, you gave me a thumbs up, right? Did you try it out? Yeah. Okay. Cool. Cool. What did you make? Did you ask them their name, their age? What did you make with your program?
I asked them the name.
Yeah. And did it work like it was working for me? Yeah. Okay. Perfect. I guess while people are trying it out, I'll just give you a little bit of, some extra helpful tips or things about this is usually when you're sort of, creating variable names. So for example, before when I was asking their name, right? I was storing it in a variable called name. And then after I changed, what I was asking them, when I was asking them their age, I sort of modified or changed the variable name to sort of actually represent what's being stored inside of it, right? Because if you think about it, if you have like a really big program, right? You have lots and lots of variables. And, if I have by accident two of the same variables, it'll get like mixed up and stuff, right? So you want to make sure that you have good variable names so that when you want to use it later, know exactly what it's storing, right? So you can access it easily, okay? Eunice gave me a thumbs up. Christopher, GIE, how are things looking for you guys? GIE is giving thumbs up. Christopher, do you need help with something? No, you're good? Sure? Okay, perfect. All right. And Lynn, were you able to get it working?
No,
No? Okay. Do you want to try, or should we you want to come back to it later?
maybe come back to it later.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, so I think we should be good. Any final questions before we move on though? Again, I just want to introduce you to these concepts, right? So if you don't, it doesn't stick right away, that's completely fine, right? We're gonna work through this as we go into more and more lessons. You're gonna become more familiar with them, right? And the number one sort of tip for any programmers is like practice, lots and lots of practice, right? So you're learning all these concepts, but the best way you're gonna learn is by actually coding and like trying and learning from your mistakes. So it's okay if it doesn't work the first time, it's fine. We're gonna figure this out. We're gonna learn how to make this work, okay? So in the interest of time, I'm going to go on to the next sort of topic here, unless someone else has any other questions. No? Okay. So the next sort of topic I want to go over is conditions and if statements. So let's go back to our sort of our Jambo that we had here, and let's go. So we just covered input and output. One thing I want you guys to be sort of aware of, and we don't need to go into this right now, but when we're doing input and output, it only works with strings, okay? And I can show you an example of this later at the end of the day if we have sort of time, but that's just a little sort of caveat to when we're working with inputs and outputs, okay? So we can come back to that later. But for the time being, let's go on to conditions and if statements, okay? So you know how I explained to you sort of data types, right? What they were, like why we need them. So now, as I was explaining, right? Now, as your programs get bigger and sort of more complex, right? You're trying to like work on like a bigger problem, start trying to like, do something more complex with your program. We need to add to it something that we call logic, right? So in terms of like, think about when we think like normal day-to-day stuff, like, hey, like it's raining outside. I need to put on a raincoat, right? That's logic there. Like, since it was raining, you needed to put on a raincoat, right? Otherwise, you would get wet, right? For example, if it's sunny outside, don't wear a like a winter jacket, right? That's another example, right? So since something is true, or something about a given sort of condition, right? You can take an action according to it, right? So we want to be able to do that in our programs as well. And the way we sort of do that is using if statements. So to show you what an if statement looks like, let's go back to the code terminal, and you guys don't have to code this. I'm just gonna introduce it to you guys, okay? So what an if statement is basically it will tell, or it will run our code according to certain conditions, or some sort of requirement that we give it, right? And then we can sort of see it happen. So for example, let's say let's just have like a very simple thing, like we're gonna pretend that we're police officers and we're giving out parking or speeding fines, okay? Like just tickets to people who are not driving well, okay? So let's create two variables, okay? The first variable we're gonna create is gonna be my car's speed, okay? So the car speed is gonna be the variable name, right? And so remember I said you want to name your variable something useful, something that tells you what it's actually storing, right? So car speed is going to store the speed of my car. So someone give me a number. How fast is my car going? Quick.
50 kilometers per hour.
50 kilometers. Okay, perfect. So my car is going at 50 kilometers an hour, okay? And let's say the light we're gonna pass by a traffic light, okay? What should it be? Should it be green, yellow, or red? Well, what should our traffic light be? Someone give me. Should I make it red, green, or yellow?
Red.
Red, okay, so let's make it red. Okay, and remember, we're gonna use strings for this, right? So red, because it's a word, right? If it was a character, only one letter, we can use a character, but we're gonna use strings for this. So I have two variables, one for my car speed and traffic light, okay? So when do you get a ticket? You get a ticket if you cross the intersection when it's red, right? So that's a condition, right? So here's, I'm gonna show you how it looks like in code. So if traffic light, so this is my variable here, right? That's what's storing what the actual traffic light is gonna be, right? Equals. So this is a special thing we use in Python, right? And I'm gonna go back and show you all the example, different types of comparators and everything you can use, but it's a very simple example. So if the traffic light is equal to red, that means you broke, the intersection, you violated the law, right? So, you'll get a fine. So then I'm gonna say, I'm gonna print out that you get a fine of, let's say, $100, okay? And otherwise, so else, so if this is true, so if the light is red, you're gonna get a fine. Otherwise, you're going to, you can go, right? You're good to go. You are good to go. Okay. So now let's see this. So I'm gonna run this, okay? And what do you think is going to be the output? Am I gonna get a fine, or am I good to go? What do you guys think? So I'm checking what is my variable storing, right? So if my variable, which is called traffic light, is equal to red, then I get a fine, right? So will I get a fine or not based on sort of the information that you see here? What do you guys think? Who thinks I'm
Yes.
gonna yeah, yes? Okay. Who thinks I'm gonna fine? Quick show of hands. One person? Okay, let's see. So I'm gonna run this. Let's see what happens. So I do get a fine. And why is that? Because this traffic light here is storing red, right? So here, this is going to look at what's inside of this variable, which is red, and compare it with my condition here. So if it was actually red, which it is, then I get a fine of $100, right? So if I change this to green, this is going to look at, hey, what's inside of this variable? So this variable is storing green. Is green equal to red? What do you guys think? No, right?
No.
So if green is not equal to red, then will I get a fine or am I good to go? This statement here, so this print statement will only run if this condition is true, which is the first thing. Otherwise, this else, it can be anything. So if it's like a number or anything else, it will always go into this condition, right? It will go into this print statement. So since green is not equal to red, right? Like you guys said, it's gonna say you're good to go, right? You guys agree? Yeah, okay, let's see this quickly. So I changed it to green and we're good to go, right? So that's just a very quick example of how do you use, different conditions and if statements to sort of handle different types of logic, okay? So if we go back to our quick Jamboard here, these are the different types of conditions you can use in our programs, okay? So we just saw this one in our example here, the equal sign, right? So if you want to compare two values, right? Like, is red equal to green? Is 1 equal to 1? Whatever, right? We can use the equal sign comparator. So note that in Python, we use one equal sign for assigning or storing something in a variable, right? You guys remember that? Right? And when we want to check if two things are actually equal, we use two equal signs, okay? All right, so now Next thing that we have is not equal. So this has an exclamation mark and then right beside it equal sign. So it means like, is red not equal to green, right? Or is 1 not equal to 2? So if 1 is not equal to 2, that's going to be true, right? Because 1 isn't actually equal to 2, right? So these two are sort of opposites of each other, if you guys can sort of see that, right? And then everything else is sort of, stuff you've seen in math class. So you have less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, right? You guys all remember this stuff from math, right? So we can use this for when we're comparing numbers and all sorts of things like that. The two new things that we have here are and or, okay? So we can combine different types of conditions, right, into one big one. So we can say, hey, like if the weather is good and my mom gives me permission, I'm gonna go outside and play with my friends, right? Like if the weather is not good or your mom doesn't give you permission, right, then you can't go outside. Does that make sense? Like in order for you to go outside, you need both of these conditions to be true, right? So that we use the and to sort of combine conditions, which all of them must be true for it to work. And then our second type of sort of comparator we can use is the or. So, if the weather is good or I pass my exam, let's say, I can get ice cream, right? So if you do either of those two things, so if the weather is good or you pass your exam, then you can get ice cream, right? So I can have 10 different conditions like those. And if even any one of them is true, then it will actually, run the command or whatever I have inside of it, right? Does that sort of make sense to you guys? So in terms of an if statement, right, we can use that to sort of combine lots and lots of logic. So, if the traffic light is equal to red, you get a fine of $100. Otherwise, everything else is going to here. So let's make it a little bit more complex. So let's say if your car speed is, what should our speed limit be, guys? Someone give me a quick number. What's the maximum speed we should be traveling on in a road?
60.
60. Okay, so if our car speed is more than 60, so the current limit on the road is 60, but if you're going more than that, then you should get a fine, right? You should get a speeding ticket, right? So I'm gonna look at the syntax here. We'll learn more of that again in the future. You don't have to worry too much about it, but if the car speed is more than 60, which means you're going more than what you should be, then you're also going to get a ticket. So you get a fine of, let's say, $200, okay? So now, what do you think is going to run if I click, the actual run command here? So our car speed is 50. Our traffic light currently is green. So if we step through this, right, one by one, what do you think is going to happen? Are we going to get a fine of $100? Is our traffic light currently red right now? Well, our traffic light is, well, what right now? It's green, right? So it's not equal to red. So we won't get a fine of $100, right? So then let's look at the next one. Is our car speed over 60? What's our car speed right now? What's stored inside of this variable? So someone give me an answer. Let's see.
Your car speed is 50.
It's 50, right? Perfect. So our car speed is not greater than 60. So this condition is false, right? So it will go on to the next condition. And so it's going to print you are good to go, right? Do we all agree with that? Okay, now let's see this. Again, it says you're good to go. Perfect. Now, let's see. Another thing we can do is inside of if statements, we can have if statements, and then you can have something called an else. So if something is true, do this, otherwise do this, right? Like the opposite thing you want. Whatever, you can tell it to do pretty much anything. You can, that's up to you as a programmer to decide. But let's say you have multiple things you want to check for. So, you know, if traffic light equals yellow. We're gonna give them a fine of just $10, okay? Because we're gonna be nice here. We're gonna give them the benefit of doubt. So you get a fine of $10, okay? Otherwise, you're good to go. So if I make this yellow, what do you guys think is gonna happen? Let's work through this one by one, okay? So my traffic light is yellow, okay? So once it comes inside this if condition statement, is going to check each line one by one. So is traffic light equal to red? Yes or no? What do you guys think? No, right? Because it's showing yellow. So it won't run this print statement. It's going to go on to the next condition. So else, so this elif basically means else, or like the next if condition that I want to follow up after it, okay? So if traffic light is equal to red, which it's not, we can go into the next condition, which says else if traffic light is equal to yellow, right? Is our traffic light currently yellow? Anyone? What is our variable storing right now? Traffic light.
Yeah, traffic light is yellow.
Yeah, perfect. So since your traffic light is yellow, this condition is going to be true, right? So anytime the condition is true, it will actually go inside of that sort of block of code that you see that little like indent here in all these print statements. So that's the sort of block of code for each of those if statements, right? And so then it's going to run that sort of corresponding line of code. So it's going to run, you get a fine of $10, and let's see that, right? You get a fine of $10. So hopefully you guys can sort of see like, you know, how it's all like fitting together, right? You have a condition which you can use to, you know, see if something is true or false, right? And you can use all these different types of operators. So you can use equal to, not equal to, less than, greater than, right? Then you can use and or to combine all those different types of comparisons, right? Into a bigger comparison. And then you can sort of use those comparisons, right? To see if something is true or false. And then based on those, you can sort of run, you know, corresponding code. So, you know, if something is true, you know, print this out, or, you know, add these two numbers together. Otherwise, do this, or, you know, like, or like, you know, end the game, whatever that is, right? Depending on what you're trying to create. Does that make sense? I'm seeing a couple of confused faces. Like, if there's any question at this point, something you're not understanding, feel free to ask, okay? Are we all good here? Christopher, GIE, yeah, everyone? Lina, are we good? I think you joined a little bit late, right? Did you sort of follow along near the end, or?
Yeah, I kind of like crashed. So I had to like restart the computer.
Oh, okay. No worries. But you're good with everything now, right? So far? Yeah, okay, perfect. Cool. Okay. In terms of time, how are we doing here? Do we have time for the what's
Yeah,
the
yeah. So
all right, so let's continue on. All right. So no more questions. Anything before we move on? All good? Yeah, perfect. Okay, so now we're gonna make a quick little game, and we're gonna work through this, okay? So I'm gonna need your guys' help to, you know, work through this. There is one little thing I haven't shown you, and it's called loops, and that's gonna be something I want to save for another class. So I'm gonna sort of explain to you as we work through that, okay? But in terms of the rest of the code, in terms of making this game, like you guys should be able to do it, all right? So I'll help you along and we're gonna do this together. So I'm gonna code it on my screen, you guys can follow along, or we can just code it together, okay? So the game we're gonna make is called a number guessing game. How many of you guys have played that? I'm sure you guys probably play with your friend or something, right? You think of a number in your head, your friend tries to guess it or something like that, right? Has everyone sort of done that before? Yeah, perfect. Okay, so we're gonna try making that with Python now, okay? So basically what we're gonna do is we're gonna sort of have, our computer generate a random number, okay? And then we're gonna have the user try to guess that number, okay? So there's a couple of things that I'm gonna sort of do just to set it up, and then we're gonna work through it. So I'll explain to you as we go. So first thing we need to do is sort of import something called a library. And basically all this is that this is sort of a piece of code that someone else already wrote, which you can use in your program. So that's another cool thing about Python, right? Is that you can make all these cool like scripts and cool Python projects, and then you can share it with your friends, you can put it out there for other people to use as well, right? So this import random is going to import the library called random that someone else made, and we can use that to sort of generate a random number. Okay, so let's call this, I'm going to create a variable now. Okay, so random number equals, and this is, you don't have to worry about this, it's just like the way of actually generating the random numbers. So this is how it's done, random, and all this is going to do is generate a number between 1 to 100. Okay, so any number between 1 to 100, right? And then let's sort of define how many guesses should we allow our user to sort of guess the number. Someone give me a number. What's a good fair number?
50.
50? Okay, we can do that. So we're going to allow 50 guesses. So guesses allowed equals 50. So this is just the basic setup that we have right now. All we have done here is we have imported a library called random. We're using that library to generate or, sort of create a new number that we don't know. Every time we run the program, it's going to create a new one. And it's going to store it inside of this random number variable, right? And then we have also created another variable called guesses allowed. And we have set that value to 50. It could be anything. We can, change it to, 5 or, technically we can't do negative numbers because then like, you can't really ask someone to guess a negative number of times, right? Like that doesn't make sense. So we have set it to 50 right now. So it means like, we're gonna ask the user 50 times until they get it right, what the random number is, okay? Are we all good at that then? Yeah, okay. So when you're sort of creating a program, the next sort of, thing that you want to do is you want to like, print something out, tell the user what is your program, what do they need to do? Because for example, if I just like run a program and I don't see anything, like I don't know what to do, right? It's just a blank screen. So let's print something out to the screen so that they know. So let's just say, welcome to the number guessing game. Okay. And let's see if that works. What is this one's? Oh, there we go. Yeah, so do you guys see this? Now, like, when the user comes to play my game, they can see this at the very top. Welcome to the number guessing game, right? So now they know, hey, I'm gonna play a number guessing game, right? And then we can, print out more stuff and, ask them to enter their guesses later on. So that's just, sort of a good sort of, I guess, design practice you want to do when you're making these programs, right? So we print it out, welcome to the game, and we're gonna tell them that, I want you to guess numbers between 1 and 100, right? Because when we wrote our code, we know that the number is between 1 and 100, right? So to make it fair for the user, we're going to tell them, hey, the number is between 1 and 100. I want you to guess any number between that, okay? And it's going to be correct. So let's print that out quickly too. So let's just say I'm thinking of a number between 1 and 100. Okay, again, let's run this. So as you can see, it's going to print it out as we're going. So welcome to the number guessing game. I'm thinking of a number between 1 and 100, right? So now the user sort of knows, like, yeah, I'm going to play a guessing game. I have to guess a number between 1 and 100, right? Does that make sense? Perfect. So now let's think about this. What's the next thing we have to do? Like, when you think about a number guessing game, right? Like, how does it work usually? Can someone like just tell me, like, overview, like what do you do? Like, you have thought of a number, right? You told them to guess a number. So now what's the next step? They guess a number, right? So once they guess a number, like what are the different cases? Can someone tell me? Like, the number could be correct, it could be wrong, it can be too big, too less, right? Those are all those different types of cases. So when we're sort of trying to code it out in our program here, what should we do? Like, what do we need to consider? Anyone have any ideas? Well, what should we be doing now? We told them to guess a number. Now what's next? Like, we need to actually get their sort of guess, right? So what do we use for that? What do we use? We covered it earlier in the lesson, right? Anyone? No? Okay. Well, let me give you a hint. So remember, anytime you sort of want to, get something from a user, we use the input, remember? We want to get something from the user. So we're going to input something into our program, right? So what are we going to input in terms of this example? Anyone? Christopher, do you have any ideas? No? What about Yun? You know what we need to ask the user for? We need to get a guess, right? Okay, so here, what we're gonna sort of use now, right? Because like I said, we need to get the guess from the user, right? So in order to do that, we need to get the input from the user. We need to ask them for a guess, right? So, and here's the thing that I told you, this is what we didn't cover yet in the lesson, but I'm just going to quickly explain it. And we're going to use something called a while loop, okay? And what that while loop does is that it's going to keep on doing something again and again until the condition that we give it, right? Something that I tell it doesn't become true, right? So until the guesses allowed is greater than 0. It means that until the number of guesses I'm allowed is more than 50 or more than 0, which it is, right? We start off with 50, then the user is going to take a guess, right? So then the number of guesses allowed goes down by 1, right? Then they guess again, right? They'll keep on going until either they guess it correctly or they run out of the number of guesses that they're allowed, right? And then they lose the game, right? Those are sort of the two big conditions that we have, right? You guys agree? Give me a thumbs up if you guys agree. Just want to make sure everyone's following here. So yeah, perfect. So what this is gonna do is, like, all the code that we write inside of this if statement is gonna do over and over again until, like I said, the condition until it's more than 0. Okay, so while it's true, we're gonna ask them, we're gonna print, we're gonna tell them how many guesses do they have left. So you have, and then we're gonna print out the number of guesses. And what this is doing here is that stir that little sort of function that we're putting around the guesses allowed is going to convert that number into a string. Because remember when I said that when we're doing input and output, we can only work with like strings, right? So we need to convert this number into a string here, okay? So we're converting that number 50 here, the number of guesses or whatever it's storing inside the variable into a string. So you have the number of guesses that's it's storing inside the variable. We're gonna add it with the guesses left, okay? And this is going to just basically print out how many guesses do they have left so that they know that, hey, I'm, running out of guesses, right? And then now let's actually get the value or the guess or the, the number that they're thinking of. So I'm going to store this inside of another variable, right? Guess is equal to, and then I'm going to get the input from the user. So it's going to be enter a number between 1 and 10. Okay. And then this time I actually want to store it into an integer, right? Because I'm working with numbers now. So I'm going to convert this into an integer by, again, putting this around the int sort of, brackets there. So far we have, again, printed out the number of guesses that are left. And then we're going to get the number that they're actually going to guess, okay? Once you have that, now what do we need to do? We need to check that, is their guess correct, right? If it is, then you need to tell them that they win, right? If their guess is too low, then you need to give them a hint, be like, oh, that's not the right one, but your value you guessed is too low. Try something bigger, right? So have you guys played the game like, it's moving away from something that's like hot, as you're getting closer, as you move away, you're getting colder, right? So something like that, just want to give the user some feedback. Hey, guess number is too low or too high. So then they can guess the next one according to that, right? So now we're gonna use our knowledge of if conditions to do that. So if the guess, which is what the user actually guessed right now, if that is equal, meaning it is actually equal to the random number that we have generated, right? So the guess they do is actually equal to the number, then we're going to print, let them know that you won, right? You won the game. Now, else, if the guess is less than the random number or the number that we actually generated, what do we need to do? What are you going to, what's the hint that we're going to give them? The value that they guessed is less than the actual number. So what do they need to do? Guess a bigger or smaller number? What should we be doing in that case? Anyone? We should be guessing a bigger number, right? Because you want to get closer to that value that you're guessing, right? So try a bigger number, right? We're going to give them that hint. And otherwise, so if the number is not equal to the number that we're looking for, and the number is less than the number that we're looking for, right? So what's the other only option? If it's not equal to or not less than, then it can only be bigger, right? So else, and that else is going to cover all the other cases. So we're going to print, and by the time it gets to this else statement, it's going to be a small number, right? So, or it's going to be a biggest number. So we're going to do try a smaller number, right? Does everyone follow? Any questions so far? No? Okay. So now we're going to try a smaller number. And then at the end of this, we're going to, this variable here that's keeping track of the guesses allowed. So if it's, if they guess the current number, then we're going to sort of break out of this, which is going to sort of end the program and like finish everything up, right? Otherwise, by the time it goes down here, it means that they haven't actually guessed the number. So it's going to keep on asking them again and again until they run out of guesses. And to make sure that, you know, every time they take a guess, we sort of, you know, decrease our value like of the number of guesses allowed at the top. We're gonna do that by doing this here. So we're going to do minus equals 1. And what that does is whatever is stored inside of guesses allowed. So when you start off, it's going to be 50, right? This minus equal tells it, I want it to store like whatever it has currently and then minus 1. So it's going to be 50 minus 1, right? So when it runs the second time, since it did 50 minus 1 previously, right? So that's 49 now. It's going to subtract 49 minus 1 next time. So it's going to be 48. So they're going to keep going down and down every time they make a guess, right? So 50, 49, 58, or 48, and keep going down until it gets down to 0. And then once it like, you know, becomes less than 0, it's going to break out of this sort of while loop here. And then we can, you know, sort of know that, hey, the game has ended. And since they didn't guess it so far, we're gonna just take one quick check, right? It's like if guesses allowed equals 0, it means that we ran out of all our guesses. Then we're gonna print, sorry, you lost the game, right? Because they couldn't guess the number so far. And then we're gonna tell them what the actual number was, right? So the number was, and then let's print out the actual number so that they know that, you know, what was the actual number that they were guessing, right? So this is what we have so far, right? So we create a random number, we define how many guesses we're gonna allow the user, right, for our game. Then we're gonna print out some information so that they know what they're working with. Then until they don't run out of guesses, we're gonna ask them for a new guess, right? And then if that guess is equal to the number here, so we're at this point right now, then we're gonna print that you win the game, and then we're gonna stop. So once you break out of the loop here, it's gonna go directly down here. It's gonna skip through all of this stuff because then it's gonna come back to the outer line again, right? And then again, at the end, there's this last if statement, which will only be true if they actually get to, you know, 0 guesses, right? So it means they've used up all their guesses. Okay? Does that make sense to everyone? Yeah? Okay, so let's try running this, okay? So here's the first time. So let someone give me a guess between, oh, it should be 1 and 100. Let's try that again. Someone give me a number between 1 and 100.
70.
70, okay, perfect. So let's guess 70. See, you gotta be very careful if you're typing when you're doing the variable names here. Okay, so let's do it again quickly, sorry. 70. Okay, so it's telling us try a bigger number. So it means that the value that it's actually, you know, that we're trying to guess is bigger than 70. So someone else give me a different number that's bigger than 70.
80.
80, okay, let's try 80. Okay, so now it's saying try a smaller number. So the number is between 70 and 80, okay? So that's sort of where we're at right now. So what's the number between 70 and 80?
73.
73, okay, let's try 73. Oh, it's saying bigger. So it's more than 70 and it's more than 73, right? But it's less than 80. So it's somewhere between 73 and 80, right? So what's another guess you can make?
76.
76. Okay, let's try that. 76. Oh, even bigger. Okay, so it has to be less than 80, but it's bigger than 76. So 77, 78, 79. Which one should we guess out of those three?
78.
78? Okay, let's try 78. Okay, so it's telling us to guess a smaller number. So what's the only number we have left now? It's not 76.
77.
Okay, 77. Perfect. Right, guys? What do you think it's gonna say? That's the correct one. There we go. That's it. We got it. So you see how sort of, the code that we did on the side here, right? We can build out a quick and simple, easy game that the users can play, interact with, right? You see how it's all sort of fitting together, right? Does anyone have any sort of questions so far, or anything else? No? How's the game? Do you find it interesting? This is a very simple game, right? Again, you can make lots and lots of things with Python, right? I just want to introduce you guys to, like very basic concepts and, how you can build something out from scratch using, the stuff that we learned today, right? So hopefully you guys had a little bit of fun, learned a couple of new things, and yeah, I think this pretty much wraps it up for our demo class. Again, like I said, do you guys have any other last questions or something you're curious about?